The Genesis.
Or help God we messed up already.
In the beginning, there was nothing but God. And so God spoke, and there was light. Over the course of 7 days, God created all things.
The earth.
Animals.
Fish.
The entire universe. And finally, a man, created to be like himself.
Not bad.
But God saw that the man was lonely, and so he created a woman to be his companion.
Not bad.
Everything was perfect. God had provided the man and woman everything they needed, and they were in a relationship with him, just as he planned. Until one day...
Hey, girlfriend.
Who, me?
No, I'm talking to the other only woman on the whole planet. Yes, you.
What's up?
Well, I was just wondering. You and that dude you hang out with, you seem to have it pretty good around here. And I noticed you guys never even made a tree here. What's up with that?
God has given us just one rule, that we can't eat from this one tree. If we do, then we'll die.
Oh, please. For eating a piece of fruit? You won't die. Do you mean to tell me you have the run of the whole world here, and you're scared to eat from one little tree?
I'm not scared. I'm not chicken. What?
So prove it.
Aw, man.
Hey, you guys need to eat around here. I'm starving. Oh. Oh, man.
They had broken the one rule that God had given, and as a result, messed up a perfect relationship with the perfect God. They were banished from the Garden of Eden and had to spend their days laboring for the food that had once been provided for them. Time passed, and Adam and Eve had 2 sons. Abel was a shepherd,
Howdy.
and Cain was a farmer.
Yeah!
Woo-wee! My herd's been so good lately, nice and fat and healthy like, and I just got God to thank for it. I know what I'll do. I'll make an offering to him of my best sheep. That sure to please him.
Yeah. My crops are just great. I just love working out in the hot sun all day. Thanks, God. Well, I guess I could give him some of my crops as an offering, too. What? I'm not giving him my best stuff.
God was pleased with Abel's sincere offering of his best sheep, but Cain, well, not so much.
What?
God said to Cain, "Why are you angry? You need to get control of that stuff before it leads you to sin."
Yeah, I'll work on that. Hey, Abel, I have something to show you in the field. Come on.
Show me what?
You know that thing about?
Oh yeah, the thing of wow!
And so, Cain killed Abel, and the first murder had been committed. From then on, things didn't get much better. Man continued to get more and more evil and grow further and further apart from God. And that relationship that God had once had with people, his very reason for creating them, was long gone. So, God decided to start over. He brought a huge flood on the earth, destroying everyone in the world, except one man's family, whom he shut into a boat with 2 of every animal.
They just wish they were dead from the smell.
Noah's family was saved from the flood and got busy repopulating the earth. Scene 2, the promise. Time passed, and even though God had shown with the flood that he meant business, most people ignored him and continued to sin. But a few people really tried to follow him. One such person was a man named Abraham.
Abraham!
What? Who's there?
It's me, God.
I can't believe God is talking to me. What have I done that I deserve this honor?
You have obeyed me, and so I made a promise to you. I will give you more descendants than the stars in the sky. I will make a nation of people out of you, and they will be my people.
Wow, that sounds amazing. But where will I put everyone? I mean, I just have this 1-bedroom apartment.
Silence! I will give you a land of your own. I will show you a wonderful land that I will give to your descendants. You will defeat all those who live in this land if you trust and obey me. It will be a land flowing with milk and honey.
Wow.
Now go.
And so the promise was made. A promise that would show God's faithfulness time and again, even though it would be a while before it actually happened. Time passed, and Abraham and Sarah gave birth to a son. God came to Abraham and told him to sacrifice Isaac to him as a test. Now, Abraham was just about to go through with it, when an angel stopped him.
Abraham, stop! You don't have to go through with this. God was just testing you. You're past.
Don't do that to me!
More time passed, and Isaac had kids of his own, 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Now Jacob and Esau had an argument over a trick that Jacob had played on Esau, and fearing for his life, Jacob ran away to a place called Haran. Jacob eventually had 12 sons of his own, one of whom was named Joseph. Now the story of Joseph and his brothers is well known, so we can kind of fast forward through some of this. Jacob loved Joseph the most and gave him a special colored coat. The brothers hated Joseph and sold him into slavery. Joseph worked for a guy named Potiphar, but got thrown into prison when Potiphar's wife hit on him. Pharaoh was disturbed by some weird dreams and heard of a guy in prison who could interpret dreams. Joseph told Pharaoh that his dreams meant there was a famine coming throughout Egypt, and in 7 years there would be no food. Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of Egypt, and Joseph stockpiled food for the time of the famine, saving Egypt. His whole family joined him in Egypt during the time of the famine. Years passed, and Joseph's family got larger and larger. This is where God's promise to Abraham began to come true. Remember that Abraham was Joseph's great-grandfather. Eventually, Joseph died, but his family kept getting larger and larger. A new Pharaoh came into power who didn't remember Joseph or like the fact that all those Israelites were in Egypt. He enslaved them all, but they just kept on multiplying until there were about 2 million of them. The Pharaoh decided to put an end to the Israelites once and for all. He decreed that any Hebrew boys born during that time would be put to death, and it was at this time that Moses was born. Scene 3, the Exodus. Or, enter Moses, exit us. Get it? Exodus, get home. Anyway, it was at this time that Moses was born. It was at this time that Moses was born.
Okay, I am Moses. I grew up a prince, kind of killed a man on purpose accidentally, and out of fear, I ran to Midian.
Welcome to Midian, land of mystery and adventure. Home of the finest merchandise this side of the Red Sea. Sir, can I interest you in some of these,
No thanks.
What?
So I'm in Midian. I get married, I become a shepherd. Then God speaks to me through a burning bush, tells me to go back to Egypt, tell the Pharaoh to free the Israelites from slavery.
Moses, you must be joking.
So, here I am.
I will never release your people.
Tough luck, Pharaoh. God will bring his power on you.
And to make a long story short,
Too late.
he did.
Let the plagues begin. Blood in the Nile.
Frogs,
Flies.
Gnats.
dead livestock,
Boils? Oh.
Hail.
locusts,
Darkness!
And finally, the death of every firstborn son in Egypt.
Israelites, if we put the blood of a perfect lamb on the doorpost, then God will pass over this house when the plague of death kills all the firstborn sons.
And God did. And
my son is dead. Take your people and go.
430 years of slavery. We're free! Israelites, we're free! You hear that? Come and follow me!
and everything was going great.
We're following the leader, the leader, the leader. We're following the leader.
For about the first 5 minutes.
Moses, why did you take us this way? The Red Sea is blocking our way, and Pharaoh changed his mind, and the army is charging down after us. I wish I was back in Egypt.
I wish I'd never followed you. I wish I was dead.
Enough whining!
And so, God allowed Moses to part the Red Sea, leading the Israelites through on dry ground. But the Egyptians were destroyed as the water filled back in. Over that next year, many things happened as the Israelites wandered in the desert toward the land that God had promised Abraham, the place that had come to be known as the Promised Land. God gave them the 10 Commandments to obey,
Here they are!
which they immediately began disobeying.
Ahoy!
They complained that they were hungry,
We're hungry.
so God gave them manna, which fell from the sky. They complained that they were thirsty,
We're thirsty.
so God gave them water from a rock. They got sick of manna,
We don't like manna.
so God provided quails for them to eat.
Quails? Oh, I love quails. They taste like chicken.
This is how it went for the year that it took to get them to the Promised Land. The Israelites were disobedient and whiny And God continued to forgive and provide until at last they arrived at the promised land.
Now God has promised us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey.
Moses, does it have to be milk? I'm a little bit lactose intolerant.
Silence! Now I've sent a spy into the land to tell us what we will find there.
I'm back.
Well, what did you find?
There are many groups of people living there already.
What?
And they are huge.
What?
They make very dangerous enemies.
Oh, great. That's just great.
Yeah, we never did anything we want.
I wish I was back in Egypt.
I wish I never followed you. I wish I was dead.
That's it! Now God has promised us this land. He said He will defeat all the enemies for us. And yet you still complain and refuse to believe in Him.
And so God, who had led the Israelites to the promised land to punish them, they were forced to wander the desert for the next 40 years. None of those who saw God's wonders in Egypt ever got to see the promised land.
Aw, man.
Including Moses.
Oh man!
And to make a long story short,
Too late!
40 years passed. Scene 4, wandering in the desert.
Or, get out of the next exit. I've got sand in my shoe.
Moses died, and God chose a new leader for the Israelites named Joshua.
Hi there.
Joshua was humble
Oh, hey guys.
and led the Israelites well. At last it was time to re-enter the promised land. Joshua led the Israelites into the promised land, and this time they were ready to trust God and do this whole thing His way.
Listen up, Israelites. There are many people living here who will try to stop us from moving in.
Didn't we make a reservation?
Pay attention. As long as we obey God, we will defeat them. But if we disobey, then we'll have trouble.
And that was the way it worked. And when they obeyed God and did things His way, nobody could stop them.
Yay!
But when they let sin into the picture or disobeyed God, even the wimpiest of enemies beat them.
Boo!
And in this way, they eventually took over most of Canaan, the promised land. When they obeyed, they won.
Yay!
When they disobeyed, they lost.
Boo!
They won some.
Yay!
They lost some.
Boo!
They won some.
Yay!
They lost some. Sometimes they...
Sure.
Oh, okay. Where was I?
And in this way, they eventually took over most of Canaan, the promised land.
Right, thanks. And in this way, they eventually took over most of Canaan, the promised land. Scene 5, entering the promised land.
Or milk and honey?
I thought he said elk and bunnies.
Before his death, Joshua gave the Israelites some instructions.
I'm going to die soon.
Died? I didn't even know he was sick.
I'm not sick, I'm old.
Oh.
Now, are there any other questions or can I continue before I keel over right here? Thanks so much. Remember what God has done for us, even after I'm gone. Continue to obey Him, the one thing He commands us to do. Now that you possess almost all of Canaan, you must go around and defeat the few remaining groups of people.
And so, Joshua died. And to make a long story short,
Too late!
the Israelites ignored God's command to clear out all of the other people living in Canaan. Scene 6, the judges.
Or stop the ride! Going in circles like this makes me sick!
Now, the time of the judges was a tricky one for the Israelites. They refused to obey God and clear out all of the other people living in Canaan, and because of this sin, more sin followed. Soon they were marrying people they shouldn't have been marrying and following false gods. They pretty much abandoned God. And God allowed them to be captured and taken prisoner by their enemies.
God help us! We've been beaten and captured by our enemies! Hey, isn't this kind of our own fault?
You mean if we would have cleared out our enemies in the first place like we were supposed to, then none of this would have happened?
Yeah.
Huh.
God help us! We've been beaten and captured by our enemies!
And so God sent them a leader, a judge, to lead them to victory against the enemies who had captured them.
Woohoo!
And this is how it went. The Israelites would follow and obey God, and He would bless them and give them victory over their enemies.
Charge!
But then they get kind of comfy, forget about God, and God would allow them to be beaten by their enemies.
No way!
They'd cry out to God for help.
God help us! We've been beaten and captured
caught in a terrible cycle of sin and disobedience that continued for 325 years. You may wonder, where does it end?
Where does it end?
Where does it end?
It ends with Scene 7, the Kings.
Or out of the frying pan into the fire.
Now the last judge during this time was a guy named Samuel. But when he retired, the Israelites started whining again.
We don't want a judge. We want a king. The Amalekites have a king. The Philistines have a king. Why can't we have a king? We never get anything.
When they told this to Samuel, he was furious.
I'm furious.
Oh, that was good.
Was it good?
I like it.
Thank you. Don't you people know what it would be like to have a king? He would take your sons and daughters and make them work for him. They have to take care of his horses, cook all his meals, fight in his armies, work in his palace. He would take your land and everything there for himself. You would be his slaves practically.
Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Read our list. We want a king and we want it now.
So God gave them a king.
Woohoo!
He knew that this would solve everything, but he saw that they would have to learn that the hard way. Now during this time, there were many kings. First was King Saul. Now King Saul was a pretty good king for a while, but then he slipped into sin and disobedience, and so God replaced him with David.
Bye-bye.
What? You don't like me? Now David was a very good king, and during his rule, the Israelites finally seemed to be on track, following God and being obedient. Now don't get me wrong, David had his share of mess-ups, like the famous Bathsheba incident.
Do we really need to bring that up?
But overall, David had a great rule and was known for being a man after God's own heart. David set up the city of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and God promised David that his son would be the one to build the temple, and that David's family would rule forever.
Yes!
So David died.
What? I just got here.
So David died.
Ever.
And Solomon became king. Now Solomon was a great king, and he did build the temple.
Go Solomon, it's birthday. We're gonna party like it's your birthday.
But in the end, he blew it all.
Oh man.
By disobeying God and worshiping other false gods, Solomon set off a chain reaction.
Chain reaction in the house! Is it A? O! A! O!
That led to Israel's ruin.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
After Solomon's death, a kind of civil war broke out between the north and the south of Israel.
Northern Israel is the best southern. Oh, wait, I don't have a pom-pom.
Okay,
Northern Israel is the best. Southern Israel second best. Go north.
Ahmed,
What is it, Ariana Stein?
do you know what time it is?
No, what time is it?
It's time for the perfect cheer.
Who's the Israelite that's the best?
It's me. It's me.
Who's the Israelite that's the best?
It's me. It's me. Northern Israel. We don't want to hear it. Because we're the Israelites with no spirit.
So go back north and shut your mouth. The coolest Jews are from the south. Southern Israel! Woo! So good, you're so good.
Anyway, Israel was split as a result of Solomon's sin, just as God had warned. Both kingdoms, the north
Go north.
and the south.
Someone's here,
They were led by king after king after king, almost all bad kings. Further and further from God, the nation of Israel grew.
Wait a minute.
Yes, Solomon.
What about God's promise to my dad that our family would rule forever? These bad kings weren't from my family.
It's Jesus. Jesus is the king from your family who will rule forever.
It's pronounced Jesus, the J is an H. Yeah.
It's Jesus. Do you mind? I'm a little busy here, and you're supposed to be dead at this point.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Where was I?
Further and further.
Thank you. Further and further from God, the nation of Israel grew until, scene 8, the exile.
Or we'll be back.
Now during the time of the kings, God had sent prophets to warn the people. These were men sent by God to speak for him, warning people away from sin.
Please, folks, back away from the sin. There's nothing to see here. Back away from the sin and back to the God of your ancestors. I am a trained professional. I know what I'm doing. Go back to your obedient lives, citizens.
But no dice. Nothing worked. So God brought the ruin on Israel that he had told Solomon he would. Northern Israel was attacked by a country called Assyria. They were captured and hauled off to Assyria as slaves and servants. Southern Israel, now called Judah, was attacked by a country called Babylon.
Who's the coolest of countries?
It's Judah. It's Judah.
Who's the coolest of countries?
It's Judah. It's Judah.
Do you mind?
Southern Fear Rocks!
Judah was attacked by a country called Babylon. They too were captured and hauled off to Babylon as
Southern
slaves.
Fear Rocks!
Are we done now? They too were captured and hauled off to Babylon as slaves and servants. Now during this time, lots of interesting stuff happened.
In the news today, a man named Isaiah, claiming to be a prophet of God, announced that there's coming a day soon that God will be sending a deliverer. The man said, and I quote, "Unto us a child will be born. Unto us a son will be given. He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." Unquote. For more on this story, join us at 5.
Apparently, 3 young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego?
Abednego.
Where did they go?
Abednego.
Lego my ego?
Abednego. Forget it.
Anyways, these 3 young men were thrown into a fiery furnace and survived. More at 5.
In a spectacular story today, a man named Daniel is thrown into a den of hungry lions and survives. That another story is coming up at 5 o'clock.
Reports confirm that 50,000 Jews returned to the city of Jerusalem today. These Jews and their families were taken captive over 70 years ago by Babylon, but are now the first to have returned to their homeland. A man named Nehemiah has rallied these Jews to rebuild the wall surrounding Jerusalem. The rest of the city lies in ruin. I'm newscast number 2, Channel 6 News, Jerusalem.
And so it went. Time passed, and to make a long story short,
Too late.
Nehemiah became governor, and he led the people in an amazing thing.
The time has come, my friends, to recommit ourselves to following God and his ways. God has brought us to the promised land, the land promised to Abraham. God has brought us home. We must now return to following him and his ways.
And in a way, that happened. The people recommitted themselves to God and to living in his ways for the first time in many years. They didn't get it perfect, but it was closer than it had been in a long time.
Many years have passed, 400 of them to be exact, but not much was written during that period of time.
We know that somewhere during that time, Rome, who was traveling the world conquering cities, moved into Jerusalem and took over. They didn't enslave the Jews there, but they did put a Roman king in charge. His name was Herod.
Not much else happened during that time. The Jews went about their lives, obeying God, but still not having that perfect relationship with him that he had designed in the beginning. Until one silent night.
The cries of a newborn baby was heard from the depths of a filthy stable.
But that is the rest of the story. After all, a good writer always leaves room for a sequel.